Okay, hey, this is Malika Gardner. Normally I'll be coming to you about Evanston Live TV, but tonight it is about We Will. We're an organization of women who assist women and children to get involved in legislation. And I have with me today our board president, Erica Walker. She's a diversity consultant and an amazing woman, very, very accomplished. She's on the board of the UN as well as being board president here. So welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
And our special guest today, I've had her on my show, Evanston Live TV, in the past, and I'm so impressed with Juneitha Shambee because she always brings a different perspective of looking at things. And, you know, we get very emotional and passionate about things that are going on in the news. And my questions are always, well, how does that play out legally? That is always my question. How does that play out legally? How is that going to play out in the courtroom? And when we see the outcomes in the courtroom, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to us. It just doesn't make sense to us. Like how? How did Breonna Taylor's people not serve time or lose their jobs? You know, so Juneitha is here to answer our questions. So welcome, Juneitha. She practices civil rights law as well as family law. So welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me again. I always enjoy talking with you and talking with your viewers. So I appreciate it.
Yes, yes. So in being in We Will, we have 3 bills on the table, 4 that we've been pushing. And, you know, we're always posting on our We Will page, and people always have opinions and questions about things that are going on in the news. And you know, me and Erica was saying it would be great to have someone on who can answer these kind of questions, because otherwise we're just posting and people are just putting out all their ideas, their opinions. Some of them are crazy. You know, some people get into these heated debates and none of us know. You know, we don't know. So why don't we have an expert, somebody who knows? So one of the posts that's been popular on the We Will page is the Barrett Supreme Court Justice situation. Juneitha, yeah. I'm gonna throw out the first question.
Okay.
How in the world did that happen? How? And I feel like it's a violation of our civil rights. I feel like it is.
So, first of all, we have to understand, like, when these Supreme Court justices are brought in, you know, they are lifelong positions. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we should be very careful about it. Unfortunately, how it happened is because the Republicans run the Senate, and that's the simplest answer to it. You know, of course, we saw the entire argument of if she should even be nominated, and even more confirmed this close to an election, because when President Obama attempted to do it, then the GOP was all up in arms about it, about that, oh, it's too close to an election. And we were even further out, it's too close to an election, and, you know, the next president should decide instead of the outgoing president. But yet they turned around and they did the exact same thing. And then they, you know, Trump, he justified it by saying, oh, well, the Constitution allows me to do it. Well, the Constitution allowed Obama to do it as well, but because we didn't have the majority vote at the time, then Obama's nomination was not confirmed. Here, Trump does have the Senate, and the Senate is where it's confirmed, you know, and because of that, you know, they got the additional 4 votes that they needed in order to get her on the confirmed for the Senate. Mm-hmm. Despite any of the Democrats trying to sway the votes or prevent her from being there. We just didn't have the numbers, and it's all a numbers game at this point.
Mm, mm. So one of the complaints that I've been hearing, and Erica, you can jump in there. One of the complaints I've been hearing is she wasn't really qualified for this sort of lifelong position, and uh, they don't believe she's going to be fair in terms of women issues, in terms of race issues. Like, she's just not experienced. She's shown no interest in learning more, even being a woman, like, I, I she scares me a little bit. She's like some character in a thriller movie or something, just, you know. And now she's in this high position. There's nothing that like, how did the Supreme Court, how did they become just this powerful, um how did they gain as much power as they have, and how can we fight something like that?
Well, the first thing is that we have to vote at our local elections. Everyone think is the most important election is the presidential election, but it's not, as we see, because by us not voting at our local election, we missed the opportunity to vote for our Senate and our representatives there. And so because of that, we lost the Senate here, which allows the president to do the things that he's been doing these past few years. No, I agree with you that she wasn't the most qualified. I think I've practiced more than her. you know just from what I read, I've done more, practice more, and that is frightening, and that is scary to know that someone with that little experience, yes, you may be able to teach it, but can you apply it? And that's the question, right? Even when we're in school, we say that, oh yeah, I'm book smart, but can you apply what you learned in the real world? And she's going to be taking on some very, very, very heated decisions at this point. Right now, the ballot issue is up before the Supreme Court, and she hasn't made a decision one way or the other. Many Democrats wants her to recuse herself because she's just getting in. She hasn't had that opportunity. And so they don't feel like that she should weigh in. And I agree. She even agreed to a certain extent, for the simple fact that she did have a spokeswoman speak out for her and say that she just hasn't had enough time to review all the files, all the complaints, all the pleadings of the parties in order for her to make a valid or a justified decision in this. So at least I can respect that much from her, but that doesn't mean that going forward, she'll make that same decision. And she was very quiet on a lot of issues in her confirmation hearings on certain, like, really hot topic issues, abortion rights, and, the presidential run. And she was very quiet on those. And so that scares us a little bit as well. And even Trump is relying on her to be his secret weapon at this point. And so there are a lot of issues there with her that we all should be afraid. She's been put into a seat. She's filling a position of a giant that was for women's rights.
Right.
And now at this point, she can get in there, she can undo all that work that was done. And so that's the frightening part of it. But unfortunately, because not enough people take local elections serious enough, then we have what we have here, where they have the majority control over the Senate, which allowed her to be confirmed and appointed to this lifelong position that's going to rule some, our everyday lives.
So I have a quick question about that. What do you think, and I know it's a little bit outside of what you do, but what do you think we can do to make a better connection for people between local or state legislation and confirmation of somebody like her, because we don't have the power right now? Like, I don't think people make that connection about what they do locally can have a broader impact. What can we do to spread the message and not have us learn this fact when it's too late, you know?
And so you can do what you're doing right now, right? You're having these forums and you're having this conversation, and you're highlighting what's actually happening, right? And it is showing people that there is this connection, you know, from your local elections. There's this connection here that is necessary, because this, you know, what you do locally can affect us nationally, right? And it's just education. A lot of people don't understand that because they haven't really been educated on that point, to know that it starts at home. Like that should really be the motto here, right? It starts at home. And at home, I mean, you know, locally, with your senators, with your congress people, with even your mayors, your governors, you know, it starts there. And that's so important for people to get involved at that level, so that we can end up affecting the national stage.
So talk to us, if Biden and Harris win, talk to us about the process, or the ability for them to add on more seats to maybe counterbalance this decision.
So, which none of them would actually agree to outly agree that they are considering packing the court. But you know, again, it's about having that it's about having that support behind you, where it, you know, it's always going to have to be in an odd number. The problem with that is that if that happens in this election, who's to say that it won't open up a can of worms? So whenever any party is unhappy about a decision or about an appointment, then they go ahead and then they add on two more, right? And keep adding on two more. And it kind of dilutes the opinion. It's more voices yelling across the table with each other. So I can understand the premise behind it.
Okay.
It creates a dangerous precedent.
Okay.
For you know, for future elections, for future nominations, confirmations, appointments. It creates a dangerous one.
Okay. Got it.
Now the situation with Barr and E. Jean, the woman who accused Trump of rape. Yes, pretty much. It's more basically rape. He raped her. And then so Barr was going to do that investigation, which was not right. It should have been an outside source. How do things like how is it that they're able to, is that like breaking the law how they're doing that? Or what's, I think because we don't know the law, so people don't know that what they're doing is wrong. You just know it feels wrong. Like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't feel right. Can they do that?
So what Barr is attempting to do, I mean, it's been done in other administrations, but what he's attempting to do is use what's called the Westfall Act. And the Westfall Act says that federal employees are granted immunity from lawsuits arising from actions that they undertook in the course of their official duties. So now what we have to do is that we have to actually break that down. We have to take each element and see if it applies to this situation. We know that Trump is a federal employee, he's the president. So we hit that. And we know that there's a lawsuit. The question is, does that lawsuit arise from his from a course of action he undertook in the course of his official duties? And many opponents say that it does not. And I tend to agree with that myself, if you really kind of break it down in the interpretation of it. Barr's argument point is that he tries to justify what he's doing in allowing a federal agency to defend Trump that really is on a private matter. You know, so he's stating that by Trump responding to reporters while he was president about an action that's a private action that happened actually before he became president, he's stating that that's enough to say that he undertook an action while performing his the course of his official duties. And there's the problem there, because when he said that he didn't rape her, which is what the he perjured himself in a way, you know, that's what we're saying, he's lying about that. And he was talking about an action that happened before he became president, not something that he did while he was president, while he was a federal employee. And so I think it's a large overstep or a broad interpretation of that actual law. I personally, I link it towards, you know, people have the Bible, right? And the Bible says something, but how you interpret what the Bible says and what they mean is something completely different, you know, and everyone has their own different interpretation of it. And so that's pretty much what Barr is doing here. He took this act and then he broadly interpreted it in order for it to fit his fact pattern or fit Trump's fact pattern in order for him to go ahead and be the private attorney for Trump during this time. I mean, even Giuliani has something to say against it. You know, they're button heads at this point, but no, I think it's too broad of an interpretation. It allows too many things to get in, to say that anything that you do just because you're a federal employee, even if it relates to something prior to your appointment or prior to your employment, you know, will fall under this act. And I don't know that that's what the act calls for. So I think that it should be actually thrown out, and that the DOJ should not be allowed to represent Trump in this manner for this particular reason.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty deep. We have Maylene, she's also on the board of We Will. Maylene works, she's a human resource consultant.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, she has a question for you.
I do. I'm sorry that I was late. I've had a super busy day, but I do have a question, and this might have already been asked, but my daughter and I would like to know, and I'm going in the house now, but I would like to know, what repercussions do we have as citizens of the United States if Trump decides he doesn't want to vacate office? I'm really worried about that, and I want to know, you know, maybe some kind of clarity around that.
Yeah, so that has been brought up, and that is a scary notion. I don't know that they actually have a basis in law, a basis in the Constitution where he can hold over. So he's trying to use this election and mainly the mail-in ballots as a justification for him to hold over office to state that the election was pretty much a fraud, that the Democrats did something egregious in order to create this fraud of an election, that the election results aren't actually real. So therefore, he does not have to actually vacate his seat and turn it over to the next president. And it's something that hasn't been seen before, you know.
I thought the same thing, because even since, I mean, George Washington was the first one to say, this needs to be a revolving office. And it's really scary to know that, and even have to ask ourselves this question, right? But I think, I'm accompanied by more than just myself to be afraid that, well, what's going to happen if he doesn't leave? Because I don't know of any precedent of any president pulling a stunt like this.
No, I agree. So dare I say, I will, there are talks about, the army, the military getting involved. And if we have to take it to that point, what can be done to him? Can he be prosecuted for holding over the presidency?
Wow.
And that's a question that remains to be seen. But again, we've seen Trump do some really atrocious acts during his presidency, and he has yet to be spanked on the hand to say that, no, you can't do that. So that will be interesting to see. I don't know. Sometimes he could just be talk as well, right? Which, it might not be an actual threat, but, just talks. I mean, he goes back and forth on the issue of whether or not he will peacefully transfer power over to the next president. But, we know Trump to be that type of talk. So it'll be interesting to follow and to see. I can think of the worst case scenarios, in which I prefer not to, but I mean, there's already been actions taken in this election because of Trump. Sorry, not just because of the election, but because of Trump, that, in the future, if things continue to go this way, we can see another civil war here in the US, which can be extremely frightening just because of the divide. Yeah, just because of the divide within our nation.
Very, very scary.
We already have some of his supporters who are threatening that. Honestly, they're threatening that, they'll step in front of the White House with guns and they will prevent the transfer of the seat. And we've seen some of this behavior is condoned, which it should, which it shouldn't be. Yeah. And so it'll be a scary sight to see if that is to actually happen. But again, we do know that Trump does like to talk a lot more than he is about certain actions. So let's hope that that's the case in this situation.
I hope so. Does anybody have another question? Because I have another one. And then I'll be quiet, I promise. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. So as far as Nancy Pelosi, the 25th Amendment, I've been kind of educating myself around that. And so she's seeking to, I guess, clarify and make sure that if a president is unfit to take his seat, that it's very clear how the succession is going to work. And so I did hear rumors, mainly from a few friends of mine on Facebook, that kind of talk about what the powers would be and what would happen if, in fact, the president is deemed unfit for office due to COVID-19, which is what our party is basically saying. We're worried that we didn't codify the 25th Amendment to properly, delineate if the president is deemed unfit, whether because we end up with Trump for 4 more years and he's a little loose cannon, or the president getting COVID and passing away. So I was wondering if you had any insight on that.
Well, I guess I'm a little unclear of your question. Obviously, if the president passed away, then the natural succession is to the vice president. That's enough. But if it is that Congress has deemed that the president is unfit, then that same succession happens, you know, and whoever that is, that remains to be seen. But I don't know if I really answered your question or not, or if there was something.
Well, I mean, there was some issues, and there's some talks around Nancy Pelosi's push to codify the 25th Amendment. And so the Republicans are basically saying she's doing it because if Biden wins, they don't think that he's mentally stable for whatever reason. And so I was wondering if you had any insight or if you've heard anything about that you could help me like understand what was happening or why that was necessary or why the 25th Amendment wasn't clear enough about who gets the seat or how that happens if Congress deems the president unfit. So I guess you did kind of answer it.
Yeah, well, and that's the question, right? Because there has been talks out there that have been unsubstantiated of whether or not Biden is fit to actually run the presidency, which is why he has Harris as his running mate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any real truth behind it. Again, this administration has spewed so many untruths, so many lies, so many unsubstantiated statements that, you know, they're pretty much using a scare tactic to prevent, you know, in order to win this presidency. And, you know, they're always doing it at the 13th hour, you know. So yeah, I mean, that would be the natural selection after, you know, or it goes like if the vice president isn't there, then it goes to the Speaker of the House, and
that's what I thought. You know, that's what we learn in you know, Government 101, right? But I was wondering why there is even rumors that Biden would be unfit. Like I didn't hear that he like failed any health exams, or as far as we know, he wouldn't have elected him or nominated him if he was unfit.
Again, you have to think about your speaker. Who's telling the story?
You're right.
You know?
Yeah, you're right about that.
That's the plain and simple fact of it. Who's telling the story? And of course, they're going to put their own spin on it and their own opinion. Again, like I said, this is a scare tactic. No, there hasn't been any indication that there's anything wrong with Joe Biden. He did have a successful 8 years under the Obama administration. He's been out for 4. He still continued to involve himself in the government. So there is no indication that there is anything wrong with him. And actually, presidents actually take a wellness test and a fitness test.
That's what I thought. See, I thought that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, there's no real indication. Again, those are just unsubstantiated statements that are thrown out there by this current administration in order to be used as a scare tactic for those who are afraid, like maybe Harris will end up being the president or something like that. And I don't, unless there can be facts. I like to deal in facts, and unfortunately, this is not one of the facts that I find relevant or even true.
So speaking of facts on this topic, are there criteria for what determines somebody to be unfit? So because there were people, there have been many people that said that President Trump was unfit. Okay, so now, you know, we're going to Biden, but is there criteria there that is established somewhere that determines fit or unfit, or determines even that they have to, who knows what a psychologist or might say if they really looked at Trump, but or Biden, you know, either one. But the question is there even criteria that suggests if X, Y, and Z happens, you have to a doctor, you must go to a therapist to say that you are fit or not fit, or something like that. Is there anything out there like that?
I would I think it would be the same criteria as us, right? If we've been deemed unsound of mind, whether that's due to some sort of mental illness, whether that's due to some sort of severe emotional distress that we're experiencing, because in that we can't make we can't make decisions soundly, you know. Obviously the most obvious is the health, you know. If there's a showing that there are health factors, but can you still carry out your duties in a in a proper way, you know, still make those major decisions that you have to make. But it comes down to the interpretation of, you know, of professionals, of whether or not someone is deemed sound of mind, deemed mentally competent. You have to be competent in order to make those type of decisions for a nation. And you know, I believe it would be in that same manner, you know, if someone wants to invoke the 25th because they have these facts, or they have this information that the current sitting president is not sound of mind. And it could even be just for a short period of time. And, you know, they can become not sound of mind and then regain their soundness, you know. So it doesn't have to be a permanent transition, but at least while they're deemed unsound, then there does need to be that transfer.
But is there any criteria that says that someone has to measure that? So meaning, so if I worked for someone, my boss could, based on observation, insist, right, that I be cleared either physically or mentally to do X, Y, and Z job because his or her opinion, based on their observation, says maybe not. And they could sort of require that I go through some sort of objective, professional something that deems me, you know, even like if you're out for a while physically, let's just take it on a physical level, you know, how the doctor has to say whatever, you know what I mean? But there's that criteria that's set up by the organization that connects with those professionals. So do we have anything in place that says that someone can say, hey, I feel like this person is not of sound mind or body, and I call the whatever, so that they have to be reviewed? Do we have anything like that? Or are you aware? Look, it's not something I usually contemplate, but in this.
So yeah, I'm not fully aware of what that criteria is. I know that there will be a neutral party that will make these decisions, and there's always where you can, you know, you can get a second opinion of anything if it's based on any sort of real, what we call reasonable suspicion. You know, if it not just because, oh, you know, well, they made a bad decision. Oh, I didn't like the decision that they made on this particular bill, so I think that they're mentally incompetent. You know, right. Of course, it can't go to that point. But if there has been a erratic behavior or erratic decision making, I mean,
well, because
some people can say that's Trump, right?
That's the question.
And that's why I'm asking, can somebody really pull that card? Because there have been some, I want to be fair, there have been some that really believe that he has had erratic decision making. You know, there are some, of course, that think his decisions are great, but for those who think it has been erratic, I wondered if anybody could just raise their hand and say, we insist that he gets.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. The thing with Trump's erratic behavior is that that's a lifetime trait. I mean, we've seen him in the industry before. We've seen who he is. So it's not like it's something apart from what he's done before. But like, let's say someone character unexplainably, inexplicably changed for some reason, then some flags might go off. But yeah, no, we've seen who he is, and he's been true to who he is. So, which is why I haven't seen anyone try to invoke the 25th for that particular reason, because it wouldn't get very far.
I see.
Yeah.
See, when you're talking to an attorney and they tell you the other side, it's just so, really?
And even sometimes I want to say something completely different, but I have to deal with facts, and sometimes you're just stuck with the facts that you have. You wish that something different can happen, but it would have been interesting though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. If you were his attorney, that's what you would say. You'd be like, he's always been this way. So what makes you think he's crazy now?
Yeah, exactly. This is who he is. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that he is ill of mind, that he's not sound of mind. He knows exactly what it is he's doing. He intends to do what he's doing.
At least he stays true to form, like you say. Once a crazy, always a crazy, right?
Exactly.
Unpredictable, but crazy nonetheless.
Yeah, I agree.
And in terms of them running by, collecting mailboxes, I mean, people are afraid to even do their drop-offs because they don't know if it's a real drop-off box, or, I mean, that is totally violating. We are in some very interesting different times right now where we're afraid to vote. Like,
yeah,
where is this vote actually going? Is it going where it's supposed to go? People are not trusting at all. What can we do? Because no one's doing anything about it.
Well, so this has mainly been happening in California, right? Where the Republicans have put up these boxes, and they've posted this sign on there that says official ballot box, right? And so then that's when the AG of California says, wait, hold on, you can't do that. It has to go to an actual box that was set there by the elections council. Well, of course, they're arguing against that to say that that's not what the law says, because now we have this new law that allows people to be designated for other voters to drop off ballots.
Right.
And so they said, like, well, if they can do that, why can't we do what we're doing? Because we're essentially acting in that same way. You have people going door to door that don't actually know the voters, and they're collecting their ballots in order to drop it off to an official election place. So why can't we do what we're doing? And so, yeah, there was some uproar about that in California, especially with the AG, and there were some cease and desist letters that were sent out. There was some threatened sanctions against the GOP in California, but they end up backing off of them because one of the things that was changed is that now it doesn't say official, it just says ballot box. And so, it's not misleading. And that's one of the things that was, you can't mislead. And so that official was the misleading language on there. Also, these boxes aren't just kind of outside; they're actually inside businesses that people frequent, and they know this business. They know, the type of business this is, and things like that. And so that kind of changed it as well to say that, okay, well, we didn't just throw it out on a corner to say like, okay, everybody and anybody can do it. But no, whoever chooses to use this box, understanding who actually has control of the box, they're making their choice, which they're allowed to do. Even if you see on the back of the ballot, the mail-in ballots, it literally has that signature there, or that language there to say, you know, the person needs to sign. Now, that signature was one of also the arguments that they were making, to say, well, you're not actually signing. And then the GOP came back to say that, well, the people who are picking up mails going door to door, they're not signing either. And you're allowing that to happen. You're actually hiring people to do this. So they're saying, like, okay, well, you know, it's almost like they made sort of a compromise to say, like, okay, well, you can't say official. You know, at least let's put it there. It has to be known that this is collected by this entity, and that you have to drop off the ballots within a certain period of time, or you know, or else, you know, what you're doing is far left. So they kind of pull back the threats of the sanctions against them, to say that at least if you're doing that, then we won't, you know, we won't pursue down this road. It's almost like it's almost like a pick your battle type thing. You know, there were threats of sanctions against them. Some prosecution was threatened against them, but unfortunately, all those threats have been pulled back, and they're not being the California GOP is not being pursued the way that they were being earlier on.
Okay. Maylene, you have another question?
Yeah, this isn't my question, it's my husband's question. He's a We Will supporter, empathizer. And so he has some questions. Take it away, Dave.
Hello. I just I had a couple of questions. Maybe so I could get a better understanding of, in the books or in the law, is there anything regarding nepotism and how unqualified, essentially family members in the administration have acquired positions, some being very powerful positions. Is there anything in the books, or is there something possibly in the works for something like that?
So they haven't. There's been no talks of banning nepotism, unfortunately, and a lot of time in politics, you know, that's a large majority of being political is nepotism, unfortunately. Should there be? Of course, you know, you have to be considered qualified and competent, and you know who measures that is a good is a good guess for me. Who measure who's competent or not? I guess it depends on. I mean, obviously, he couldn't put any of his family up for the Supreme Court if they're not an attorney, or if they haven't practiced, or if they have, well, we can't say if they haven't practiced, but if they don't really have the experience as a judge, or you know, it just isn't part of them. If they're a business person, then you know, obviously they can't do that. But you know, can they be Secretary of State? Yeah, unfortunately, you know, can they be some sort of ambassador? Yes, you know, that's just the plain and short of it, is that there is nothing currently in place to block this. They get to choose their own cabinet. Every administration gets to do that, and their staff. And this is part of their staff. I mean, we currently have a president that doesn't have the experience and isn't competent to do his job. So why not say someone in a lesser position can't go in there?
You're right about that. Okay. So he also has one more question. Oh, okay. We're full of questions. The fleet of them there.
Oh, so yeah, I came across an article regarding how with the COVID assistance that was passed, how essentially America was fleeced of millions and millions of dollars that could have essentially went to, you know, middle class, if not small and pop stores that are now closing possibly forever. I read that a lot of family members related to Congress members benefited from this. And to me, that kind of sounds, in a sense, like insider trading, in a sense. If not, I'm not too sure if you heard anything regarding that, or there's something in the law that can maybe address that later on.
Well, that I guess that's what's kind of being addressed with this new second stimulus package that they're negotiating. And it's not passing because we saw so many things go wrong with the first one. Yes, millionaires receive billions, billionaires receive even more, but the small average American family receive, maybe $1,200 to $1,700 on average. And small businesses, they also received a very small amount of money in order to survive. So that's actually one of the things that Pelosi, the reason she's kind of holding back is because they want to hash out some things like that to make sure that there is some things in place to prevent that from happening again. But unfortunately, there's always a loophole, and it's always the advantage that are able to take advantage of that loophole, and the disadvantage, they lose out, and that's the average American family that loses out. So I've seen some things like that, and it is unfortunate. And I hope that all that is kind of rolled into this new stimulus package that is currently being negotiated at this point to prevent action such as that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for those questions, everyone. We have 3 minutes left. If anyone else wanted to get a question in, I can talk to Juneitha like all night just bombard her with questions. Because I just don't understand. I mean, I know attorneys have to deal in facts. And we're lucky to have Erica on, because Erica's not an attorney, but Erica's about the facts of her work. I'm sure you all get all sorts of cases coming at you, and it has to be about facts. And every attorney that I know, they're like, Malika, I know you feel a certain way, but no one cares. They just want the facts.
Yeah.
So, is that why Trump just continues to get over? I mean, there's so many facts stacked up against him.
I mean, another reason is that he just at this point, his administration holds the power. They just do, and now what's going to happen if he loses his position, next week remains to be seen. Whether or not he'll be leaving the White House for the big house, we don't know, because there were these prior cases against him that were kind of put on hold because he became president. So it'll be interesting to know if they're going to actually be like reinstated, the stay is lifted from them, and then people can actually go after him because now he's just a private citizen. But as of right now, he has such a large protection at this point, because they do hold, I mean, other than the House, it holds a lot of power at this point. And then there are just some people that are just misinformed. Some people just kind of ride the bandwagon because they're afraid of what's going to happen to their position at some point. So it's like, play ball, because this is coming up, and if this happens, then that can happen. So people are kind of sitting on a fence on this one, and just kind of like straddling that line to not be too far right, too far left, but just enough to gain that favor. And if enough people is doing that, in the aggregate, it gives enough power.
Carol, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious. Oh, guys, sorry. I grew up in Zimbabwe, and so I'm a little bit, for me, for all the things that you said and all the change in the Supreme Court justices and how that stacked up, and even the cases that are lined up against him, first, as a basic individual, you ask yourself, why would he leave? If he loses, why would he leave? He didn't become president so he could go to jail or face some repercussions. But it feels like the country's very calm because nothing legally has been, there's been nothing, it feels like there should be reasons legally for holding him to account, but none of that has actually happened. What hope should someone like me who's scared saying, I'm not sure if there's a legal option if he decides to be extra crazy.
Well, I mean, you still have to hold out hope, right? You have to hope that the powers that be do what is best for the people and that they fight for the people. You know, at that point, he's no longer the commander in chief, and I mean, he'll continue to hold the office for a few months afterwards, but he's not the commander in chief. The writing's already on the wall. You will hope that people see that and they're saying like, okay, well, now I need to get in line because there's no going back, you know, if I don't go ahead and move forward. And a lot of politicians, they are about themselves, you know. Right now, he can promise them some things that they believe are that they believe is gonna come true. But you know, once he loses that seat, now they're like, oh, okay, well, now I better you know, change my course of action. And so you just hope that first of all that he does transitions peacefully, if that is something that's going to happen. And if he doesn't, that the right entities, the right authorities will politely usher him to the door. You know, that's why it's important, like, to make sure you talk to your local councilman, talk to your local electors. Make sure that you let them know how you're feeling, what you want for them to do for you on Capitol Hill. You know, you have to reach out to go to your local government meetings, go talk to your congressperson, go talk to your Senate to make sure that they are looking out for your best interests as well, because you are the ones that vote for them. And if they fail you, they fail us all. And they can no longer hold that seat. So that's the reason I said, yeah,
we will.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. Just make sure that that you are holding your local people accountable for what happens in Washington.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Juneitha, for your time. Always learn something new. I still hate the way law works, but
look, I have my times where I'm just like, you know what? This just isn't right. And unfortunately, I was talking to a judge the other day, and we were talking about that, how and also as a matter of fact, it was a state attorney. I was talking to them the other day, and even though we're adversaries, but they understand, well, I want to do this for you, but unfortunately, how the law is written, I can't. When we have those minimum sentencing guidelines, even for someone who has no background, and so they're frustrated with it too, but they have to do their job. And that's why it's up to us to do our job to make sure that we can get, the least possible penalties or the maximum benefits for our particular clients. And that's why it's up to, citizens at large to do their job to make sure that they get the right people in that's going to look out for their interests, the community's interests, not that particular candidate's interest.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And unfortunately, um, Senator Harris was very good at her job and now is being held against her because she was just following the law. This is the law. I'm doing my job.
Mhm.
Ugh, law is so tricky. But thank you so much, Juneitha, for coming on for our first Legally Speaking. I think it's important that we educate people on a whole nother perspective. We all have our opinions,
Yeah,
how we feel about the way things should go, right and wrong. But that law steps in, change the whole game. Like,
yeah,
are you serious? Are you serious? And we will so that we can try to change those laws,
exactly.
right? Erica, Maylene, did you all want to say anything before we?
I just want to say thank you on behalf of me and my family. You have been of so much help and bringing some clarity around some questions that always linger in your mind, but there isn't anybody really qualified to answer them. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank
Hope
you.
that you can join us again in the future. Like, we're so excited about this segment. It's so important to us.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I want to thank you as well, and I want to say that this is what We Will is really all about, right? This is, we have literally women and children and families on the line learning, and that's what we're all about. And I know that there are some things that we've all heard today that we thought, really, why is it this way? Well, then we can write a bill perhaps and advocate for that. So not only did you teach us, but you also really just demonstrated what we're all about. And so thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It was my pleasure. I thank you all for having me. This is an amazing group. And I am happy to have been the breakout attorney to speak with you all. I do, I would love to come back at any time that you all have any issues on the table that you kind of want to talk about. But no, thank you for everyone that listened. I have my number here. If you ever have any questions, you can reach out to me, and I love to help people. So that's the reason I do what I do.
All right.
One more thing before you go, for your own benefit, plugging your law firm and et cetera. What is it that you do for folks? Just so I have you we put you in our resource toolkit.
Yeah, sure. So, majority of my caseloads is a mix of family law, where I'm helping families to help decide decisions on parenting and child support, even in some that unfortunately finds themselves in the divorce world. So I'm helping to guide them through there, as well as criminal defense. I have a plethora of cases in the criminal defense arena. I've been doing that for over 8 years. Kind of why I even got into law was because of that. And then looking at the environment that we're in today, and just talking to many of my clients over the years, I jumped into the civil rights arena. One of my inspiration attorneys was, of course, Cochran, and I know a lot of people can say that, but that he just was, and I want to be able to help people to fight against the police brutality, excessive force that's happening. And we have this large prison system because of some of the excessive force and some of the actions of the police. And so I want to be able to help to reduce that. And so therefore, I am working on several civil rights cases now. I also work with several colleagues in that same arena. So those are some of the main areas that I work in. And then if just someone from the community gives me a call and have a legal question, I try to help them to the best of my ability, or I guide them to resources where they can find the help that they're looking for.
Cool. Thank you so much, Juneitha, and thank you to our guests. Thank you to Carol. She's also part of We Will. She's a supporter of We Will, and Fran Joy. Fran Joy sent in a question, but I just got it, so we'll have to save it.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Juneitha. Our first legally speaking, and looking forward to more. And we have to have you back. Have to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone have an amazing evening.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.